Kansas is known for its wide skies, violent storms, and endless stretches of farmland. But beneath the calm of its plains lies something older, darker, and far more unsettling than a tornado. There are places here where shadows linger longer than they should, where whispers rise from the wheat fields, and where history refuses to stay buried. Tonight, we'll walk into the ghostly heart of the Sunflower State and uncover 10 of its most haunted places. Be careful, Kansas may look flat, but its darkness runs deep. 1. The Old Cowtown Museum, Wichita, Kansas. Step into the Old Cowtown Museum, and you step back in time to the 1860s, a living history village with dusty streets, clappered saloons, and echoes of the Old West. But not all the reenactments here are staged. Some of the figures you see might not belong to this century at all. The museum, with its collection of original and relocated 19th century buildings, has long been a hotspot for paranormal encounters. Staff and visitors alike have reported full-bodied apparitions, cowboys walking down Main Street, women in bonnets drifting through kitchens, and children darting across the schoolyard, only to vanish. One particularly unsettling spirit is said to haunt the saloon. Bartenders closing late at night hear the clink of glasses and faint laughter, though the room is empty. Chairs scrape against the wooden floors, and the piano sometimes plays a single note, as if demanding attention. In the jailhouse, investigators have felt overwhelming dread, as though the spirits of long-dead prisoners still linger behind the bars. Others report sudden bursts of cold air in the blacksmith's shop, or phantom gunshots echoing through the dusty streets. Cowtown was built to preserve history, but in doing so, it may have preserved the restless energy of the people who lived and died there. Would you walk those streets alone after dark, knowing you might not be the only soul wandering at Cowtown? The frontier never ended. It just slipped into the shadows. 2. The Orpheum Theater, Wichita, Kansas. When the lights go down at the Orpheum Theater, the stage doesn't always belong to the living. Built in 1922, the Orpheum was once a jewel of vaudeville and silent cinema, its gilded walls echoing with laughter, applause, and the voices of stars long since gone. But audiences today whisper of shadows that linger long after the curtain falls. Projectionists have told stories of footsteps on the catwalk above the stage, where no one should be. Ushers have felt icy hands brush their arms in the balcony, and performers describe an unnerving feeling as if someone invisible waits in the wings, watching every move. One of the most famous legends involves a spectral woman seen gliding across the balcony in a shimmering gown. She never speaks, never acknowledges anyone, only vanishes when approached. Some believe she was a performer who died tragically, forever bound to the theater that was her stage. Investigators have captured EVPs of faint applause, the shuffle of unseen feet, and even voices calling names in the empty auditorium. Imagine standing alone in that grand, darkened space, the velvet curtains drawn, when you hear clapping rise from the shadows. Would you take a bow or run for the doors at the Orpheum? The performance never truly ends. 3. Brown Mansion, Coffeyville, Kansas. On the edge of Coffeyville stands the Brown Mansion, an imposing 3-story house built in 1904 by W.P. Brown, a wealthy industrialist. With its grand chandeliers, marble fireplaces, and sweeping staircase, the mansion was once a symbol of prosperity. But beneath its beauty lies something far more unsettling. The Browns suffered a series of personal tragedies, including the loss of children who died young. Locals whisper that the family's grief soaked into the very foundation of the house, and that the mansion has never truly been empty. Visitors touring the property have reported flickering lights, doors slamming on their own, and the sound of footsteps pacing the upper floors when no one is there. Some claim to have seen the ghostly figure of a woman standing at a window, gazing out at the fields beyond, perhaps Mrs. Brown, forever waiting for the family she lost. During one investigation, a paranormal team recorded a piano playing faintly in the parlor, though no one was near the instrument. Others have heard children's laughter echoing in the halls, only to find the rooms empty. Imagine walking up the sweeping staircase, the air heavy with perfume from another century, only to feel a hand brush your shoulder. Would you turn around or keep climbing, knowing someone unseen wants your attention? The Brown Mansion doesn't just showcase history, it shows the grief that history leaves behind. Topeka State Hospital, Topeka, Kansas. Few places in Kansas inspire more dread than the ruins of the Topeka State Hospital. Opened in 1872, it was meant to provide care for the mentally ill. Instead, it became a house of suffering. Overcrowding, abuse, and inhumane treatments scarred generations of patients, leaving behind a legacy soaked in despair. The stories that linger here are almost too horrific to believe. Accounts of patients left restrained for days, screams echoing through the wards, and underground tunnels used to transport the dead away from sight. By the time the hospital closed in 1997, whispers of cruelty and malpractice had already cemented its reputation as a place of torment. Paranormal investigators report heavy footsteps echoing down abandoned corridors. Even though the buildings are sealed, cold spots appear without warning, and some claim to hear the moans and sobs of former patients carried on the night air. One urban explorer described the overwhelming sensation of being watched, as though unseen eyes followed him from room to room. There are darker rumors still that shadows move in the corners of your vision, and that if you stand too long in one spot, you'll hear your own name whispered back at you. Would you risk walking those crumbling halls, knowing the walls have absorbed more agony than most could endure at Topeka State Hospital? The suffering never ended. It just changed form. 5. Sauer Castle, Kansas City, Kansas. Perched on a lonely hill, Sauer Castle looks every bit the Gothic mansion it was meant to be. Towering spires, wrought iron gates, and windows that seem to watch you with suspicion. It was built in the 1870s by Anton Sauer, a German immigrant who wanted a grand home for his family. Instead, it became a place of tragedy. Over the decades, the Sauer family was struck by misfortune, untimely deaths, suicides, and rumors of murder. By the mid-20th century, the mansion was abandoned, and the stories began to spread. Locals whispered about lights flickering in the windows when no one lived there, shadows moving across the turret rooms, and voices echoing through the empty halls. Ghost hunters claim to have captured EVPs of disembodied voices calling out names, while trespassers tell of seeing a woman in Victorian dress staring from an upstairs window. Some even say they've heard children laughing from the yard, though no children have played there in decades. Standing outside the rusted gates, you can almost feel the house's sorrow pressing down like a storm. Would you dare to step inside, knowing every creak of the staircase might be the sound of someone or something following you? Sauer Castle isn't just haunted by ghosts. It's haunted by the weight of a family's endless grief. 6. Hutchinson Public Library, Hutchinson, Kansas. By day, the Hutchinson Public Library feels like a sanctuary of quiet. Rows of books, the faint scent of paper, the soft hum of fluorescent lights. But when the sun dips below the horizon and the halls fall silent, the library awakens in ways that have little to do with learning. Built in 1901, the library has been the scene of countless paranormal accounts. Staff members working late often describe the sound of books tumbling from shelves, only to find them perfectly in place. Others have heard the echo of footsteps on the upper floors, pacing slowly, deliberately, as though someone is searching for something long lost. The most infamous figure here is known simply as the Woman in Red. Witnesses describe her as a translucent figure, drifting between the stacks, dressed in a crimson gown from another era. Some say she was once a librarian who died suddenly on the job. Others claim she's tied to the land itself, long before the library was ever built. There are also reports of sudden cold spots that sweep over readers, pages flipping on their own, and an oppressive feeling that someone is standing just behind you, watching every word you read. Would you check out a book, knowing you might not be the only one turning its pages? At Hutchinson Library, the past doesn't just haunt history books, it haunts the very air you breathe. 7. Fort Leavenworth, Leavenworth, Kansas. Known as the oldest active Army post west of the Mississippi, Fort Leavenworth has earned the nickname the most haunted military base in the United States. Built in 1827, it has witnessed everything from frontier skirmishes to Civil War battles, executions, and centuries of restless soldiers who never went home. The fort's parade grounds are said to echo with phantom footsteps, and soldiers have reported seeing shadowy figures marching in formation long after taps have played. One of the most famous ghosts is that of Father Fred, a kindly chaplain who reportedly took his own life. He's often seen offering comfort to distressed soldiers, only to vanish when they turn for a second look. But not all spirits here are gentle. At the Rookery, one of the oldest residences on base, families have experienced slamming doors, rattling windows, and apparitions of women in morning gowns drifting through the halls. Some say the spirits belong to prisoners who were executed when the military prison was first built. Others whisper of unmarked graves hidden beneath the parade field. Imagine standing watch at midnight, the Missouri River mist creeping across the ground. When you hear boots crunching beside you, you turn, expecting another soldier, but the space is empty. At Fort Leavenworth, the dead don't rest. They keep marching. 8. The Eldridge Hotel, Lawrence, Kansas. Step into the grand lobby of the Eldridge Hotel, and you may feel like you've walked into a piece of Kansas history. Marble floors, ornate woodwork, a sense of old-world luxury. But look closer, and you'll sense something else, an invisible current that makes the hairs on your arms rise. The Eldridge isn't just a historic hotel. It's a place that has burned down, risen again, and carried its ghosts with it each time. The original hotel, known as the Free State Hotel, was burned to the ground during the 1850s in the violent conflict known as Bleeding Kansas. It was rebuilt, only to be destroyed again during Quantrill's raid in 1863, when Confederate guerrillas massacred nearly 200 men and boys in Lawrence. Out of the ashes, the Eldridge rose once more. But history has a way of clinging to places drenched in blood. Guests staying on the 5th floor, particularly in room 506, report cold spots, flickering lights, and even the apparition of a man in period clothing. Some claim the elevator mysteriously returns to the 5th floor, no matter which button is pressed, as if something unseen insists you return. The staff will tell you, with a half-nervous smile, that the hotel is active. Would you dare spend the night knowing the walls remember every scream and every fire that tore the city apart at the Eldridge? History doesn't just linger, it follows you down the hall. 9. Sallie House, Atchison, Kansas. From the outside, the Sallie House looks like any other aging Midwestern home, 2 stories, pale siding, and a small front porch. But once you step inside, the air changes. Visitors describe it as heavy, oppressive, like being watched by a child hiding just out of sight. The story begins in the early 1900s, when a young girl named Sallie was brought here to see the town doctor, who lived in the house. She suffered from severe abdominal pain, and the doctor suspected appendicitis. Legend says he began operating before the anesthesia had taken hold. Sallie's screams echoed through the house until she went silent. She died on the table, and many believe her spirit never left. Paranormal investigators who've stayed in the house report children's toys moving on their own, disembodied giggles, and scratches appearing on visitors' arms, backs, and chests. What's most disturbing is the pattern Sallie seems to target men. Some believe it's the child's anger at the male doctor who caused her death, a rage that continues a century later. Spend the night here, and you might find the lights flickering, objects thrown across the room, or the sound of small footsteps racing down the hall. And if you wake up with burning scratches across your skin, you'll know Sallie has paid you a visit. The house may look quiet, but inside, it breathes with the restless fury of a child forever wronged. 10. Stull Cemetery, Lawrence, Kansas. They say if you stand at the rusted gates of Stull Cemetery long enough, you'll hear more than the wind whistling through the prairie grass. Some swear they hear voices, whispers in a language no living person speaks anymore. Stull Cemetery, located between Topeka and Lawrence, is infamous as one of the 7 gateways to hell. For decades, rumors have swirled that the devil himself appears here twice a year, on Halloween and the spring equinox, emerging from a crumbling stairwell that once led down to the church's cellar. Though the old stone church was torn down in the 1990s, locals still say the stairs remain hidden beneath the earth, waiting for those brave or foolish enough to find them. Visitors have reported sudden, violent winds sweeping across the cemetery, while the surrounding fields stay perfectly still. Car engines stall without reason, phones lose signal, and shadows gather even on clear nights. One legend even claims that when the church stood, rain would never fall inside. No matter how fierce the storm outside, a place sealed off from the natural order. Imagine standing among broken headstones, feeling the air thicken as if unseen hands are pressing against your chest? Would you take a step forward, knowing each crunch of gravel might not be echoed by your own shadow? Stull doesn't just hold the dead, it holds something that wants you to join them. And so, the haunted plains of Kansas remind us that tornadoes aren't the only storms to fear. Behind quiet cemeteries, grand mansions, and forgotten hospitals, shadows whisper and memories of sorrow refuse to fade. Maybe the next time you drive across these endless fields, you'll glance into the horizon and wonder if something is watching you back. Thank you for walking this haunted path with me tonight. If you felt the chill of Kansas's ghosts, be sure to like this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which place you'd dare to explore, or which one you'd never step foot in. And don't forget to subscribe, because each week we return to the shadows with stories just like these. Until next time, keep your lights low and your courage close.